and this is Under the Pavement on FM 96.9. And coming up after the next track, we're going to be chatting to Rich Cross. Now, Rich Cross is one of the writers, along with Alec Dunn, I think it is, and Erin Yanker, and he's one of the people who's written a book called This Is a Message to Persons Unknown, The Story of Poison Girls. And if you've never heard of Poison Girls, then they're definitely a band to kind of check out. And this is a bit of a coincidence, but this episode of the show is broadcast on the 10th anniversary of the death of Vice Versa, who passed away at the age of 80 on the 19th of February 2016. And Extraordinary Life, the groundbreaking way she wrote and performed Any Enduring Legacy will be key components of this discussion. So coming up next, we're going to be chatting to Rich Cross. But first of all, we're going to play a track. This is Poison Girls. This is a track called Statement. And for the nerdy people out there, this was from, I think it was Poison Girls' first proper full-length album. And the album was called Chappaquiddick Bridge, about an incident that happened over in America. Rich Cross might talk about that. We'll see if we get time. And this was, it was an album, and this track was included as a flexi disc within the album, and it's called Statement. And you are listening to Under the Pavement on All FM 96.9, and all being welcome. Up next, we'll be chatting to Rich about the book This Is a Message to Persons Unknown, the story of Poison Girls, here on Under the Pavement on All FM 96.9.
I denounce the system that murders my children. I denounce the system that denies my existence. I curse the system that makes machines of my children. I reject the system that makes men of machines. I reject the system that turns bodies of my own sweet flesh into monsters of iron, steel and war, and turns the hands of my children into robot claws. I reject the system that turns the hearts of my children against this earth. I curse the system that turns the genitals of my children into factories of fire and destruction, and rapes our flesh, and tears our womb. This earth, our home.
There are no words for us, no words. There are no words for us, no words. There are no words for us, no words. There are no words.
When the fireball rapes the flesh of the earth, when the fireball tears the womb of the world, when the bullet rips apart the son and lover, when the bullet lays to waste the daughter, lays to waste the womb work and the labor, lays to waste the womb work and the labor, where are they that will cherish my flesh? Where are they that will cherish my children? The men that will stand against the death dealers. The children that can say no to the life stealers. Where are they that will curse the death dealers? I reject the system.
There are no words for us, no words. There are no words for us, no words. There are no words for us, no words. There are no words.
Their words are words that curse our flesh. Their words are words of hate that curse our flesh. They swear their hate with cunt and balls and shit. They swear their hate with bastard, tit and prick. Their words are words that lay to waste our flesh. I reject the system. throat. Only a curse leaps like vomit from my throat. Only a curse leaps like blood from my throat. To curse the warlords that laid to waste our labour. That laid to waste the womb work and the labour. That laid to waste the womb work and the labour. That laid to waste. That laid to waste. Waste. Waste.
You are listening to Under the Pavement on All FM 96.9 and doing this very much the DIY approach. All being well, we should have Rich on the line. Rich, are you there?
I am indeed.
Fantastic stuff. And we should just say that technology was, letting us down a little bit. But the whole DIY punk approach is if one thing doesn't work, we'll try something else. So just to say then, Rich, yourself and two other people have written a book, and I'm not sure I'm just trying to look. Well, I've got the copy of the book just under the laptop, so let's see. So this is a message to Poisons Unknown, to Persons Unknown, the Poisons Unknown, the story of Poison Girls, Rich Cross, and you've done this with Alec Dunn and Eric Yankee. Have I pronounced the name right?
Yeah, that's correct. So the words are by me, the design is by Alec, and Erin was our editor throughout. So it was a three-way partnership, but I was the wrangler of the words.
Yeah, okay. And it's sometimes you worry, I think I said this to you off mic, but I think sometimes you worry when you've got a book that has an academic background, it can suck the life out of a book. And I've actually talking to people who are like punk scholars and say, actually, sometimes that's an achievement of writing a book that's kind of completely dry about a really interesting topic. But this book, I think, is for the general reader.
Yeah, I mean, very much so. I mean, I bought the very first release by Poison Girls Piano Lessons, kind of the week it came out. I used to buy loads of stuff, sending postal orders to Small Wonder Records to get stuff shipped to the back of Beyond in Exeter in Devon, where I lived. And I first saw them on tour in 1981, interviewed them for the fanzine that we were doing. So, yeah, I was there. I was part of it. Poison Girls has been one of the soundtracks of my life ever since.
Yeah, and I think it's quite interesting because nowadays people go, oh, how did you manage to find out about stuff without the internet? And it's like, it was a little bit harder, but it's amazing how you could be living somewhere kind of out in the middle of nowhere, but still be finding out about these bands because there'd still be a bit of a network. Like I remember like growing up near the town of Bury, which is just north of Manchester, then it was like you had like radical bookshops that you could walk in that sometimes, I remember seeing a fanzine from Southend-on-Sea called New Crimes and then just stumbling across it and going, wow, this is great, and all these bands they mentioned, and they'd have a postal address to send stuff to.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That was definitely the way that it worked. And me and the little group of people around us who were forming bands were kind of scouring the music press for like interviews with people and listings and little adverts, because it took until sort of the mid part of the 80s for a proper distribution network to kind of set up. So you often found out things by reading the music press and then ordering it. I mean, I got hold of a copy of Feeding of the 5,000 the week it came out, Crass's debut, because I'd read a piece by Gary Bushell and Sounds, went and got another one of my postal orders and sent it off to Small Wonder. That was how you got hold of stuff.
Yeah, but we're going to talk about kind of particular, because you mentioned Crass, and there was an overlap between Crass and Poison Girls. But just to start off by saying kind of Poison Girls, I don't know if it's a false memory, but I remember seeing them I think I remember seeing them in Rochdale supporting Crass on a gig that was put on by Snotty Snail, who was linked to Not Sensibles and the North East Lancs kind of musicians collective. But I'm not 100. Well, I've had a conversation with my brother who apparently was also, I thought was also at that gig, but he can't remember it and I can. But that's when I kind of got into them, and it was very much kind of, they toured with Crass, but they were very different to Crass, weren't they?
Extremely different. And one of the things writing the book that the remaining members of the band were very concerned with is that it wouldn't be a book just about that period of close collaboration with Crass and their time on Crass Records. That was clearly a really important part of their history, of their story, but it's only a part of it. They had a life before that and a very significant life after that. Well, it's amazing, though, that the way that they kind of came across each other. if you think about the environment that they were working in, so they were punk bands who were outsiders, they were influenced by anarchist politics, very much in the DIY tradition, but they were also kind of cross-generational, so they both contained musicians, lyricists and artists who were in their 30s and 40s, and they were basically all both being shunned by the punk establishment and by the kind of commercial sector. So that alliance that they brokered to agree to play together, perform together, tour together, and then to release material on Crass Records was a bit of a lifesaver for both of them, because at the time they brokered that alliance, neither of them were in a good shape. As Richard Famous reports it, both bands were on the verge of breaking up because it was just so difficult to get any headway and to get any momentum behind what they were doing. So what they got in alliance was the ability to go out on the road together, pool their resources, pool their audiences, and get out there and make it a viable prospect.
Yeah, and it did seem like, you mentioned this in the book, that it seemed like quite a, not an unusual agreement, but I think there was agreement that whenever Crass played, Poison Girls would be play with them as well, but Poison Girls also had the freedom to go and do their own thing as well. Do you see me? Not that they get permission, but it also seemed like they could kind of branch out and kind of experiment and weren't just seen as the band that you're going to see if you go and see Crass.
Yeah, I mean, very much. And there were no managers negotiating their contracts, and nobody signed it. I think it was an understanding that they reached between the two of them. But there was nothing to stop Crass playing independently from Poison Girls. They just chose not to, whereas Poison Girls availed themselves of that. You know, it's a very loose collaboration, very important one. But yeah, they weren't bound together in any kind of way.
Yeah, and what was again? I can't remember what the point was going to make. There was, but it was like, you know. But talking about Crass as well, there was the story about vice versa, kind of coming into some money, but helping Crass kickstart the record label as well.
Yes, that's absolutely the case. That is absolutely what happened. There was a lot of debate within Dial House and within Crass about whether there should be a record label, about whether that was an appropriate thing to do, whether they should get involved with it. But some money that Vi came into in a will by way of an inheritance was a key part of setting up the label and allowing the label to function in the early days and secure some of its releases. So yeah, that was an important thing. And just an indication of the way that kind of reciprocal relationship was working at the time.
Yeah, and it just feels to me, though, that I think Crass is seen as being like you don't really want a hierarchy as an anarchist, but, you know, like the anarchist band. But it also seemed like there sometimes seems to be almost whether or not Crass stumbled across, you know, anarchism as by accident almost, because there seems to be stories about them not wanting to be labelled left or right and going, oh, so we're not labelled left or right, we'll call ourselves anarchists because we're neither of the left or the right. Just mean we could spend time having that discussion. Whereas I think with Poison Girls, it seemed like their history was kind of tied into, you know, in being involved in Freedom newspaper, being involved in anarchist kind of politics before the band started. And would that be a fair assumption or not really?
Yeah, very, very, very much so. I've got a lot of questions and queries about Crass's presentation of that part of their history. I think there's a lot to challenge in there. But in the story of Poison Girls, it's completely clear cut. So founder members of that band were street-selling anarchist newspapers, were involved in clubs, were closely involved with the Freedom newspaper for years. And they were also activists. Those founders of the second musicians were involved in the campaign for nuclear disarmament. They were involved in the rising feminist movement. You know, there was a huge amount of experience and knowledge that they brought to the business of being in a punk band, and they were informed anarchists, if you like, and not at all afraid of that label or of that identification.
Yeah, and it does seem very much that they kind of had the politics already. Do you mean, and the history where you just said, yeah, where some, and I've spoken to people who kind of said that Crass is kind of, we're neither left or right, had issues when they were kind of trying to develop the politics further on of going, hang on, so where do I sit as an anarchist of going, am I between kind of the left and the right, or is it more leftist? And what do you say? It did open up a lot of discussions. You can understand why they took that approach, but sometimes it did seem very much of the moment. And yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's a bigger conversation about the political orientation of that band.
Yeah.
But there is no question.
Yeah.
You come to Boys and Girls with an understanding that they have a political literacy at the outset.
Yeah.
And the experience to go with it.
Yeah, and that's and what would but just looking now we are going to play a track and then we're going to come back and chat. But do you think that kind of I think there's a quote on the back of the book. Where is it now? Somewhere, and it is about someone going. And you can hear me rustling the book now as I'm speaking about it, but it was like someone said, what was it? About they discovered crass, and it's like, well, I can't actually say what they said in it, but one of the people is, why the heck, I'll put it that way, did I have a crash in high school, but didn't hear about their peers, boys and girls, until recently? When we do meaningful work of digging back through the past and shining a light on women artists, we make make right past wrongs. And it was basically just someone going, how come we missed out on this band that probably ticked all the boxes? And do you think there is a feeling? Because you can kind of draw that line, can't you? Think stuff like Riot Girl and, you know, do you think that Boys and Girls get the credit for what they were doing?
Well, one of the hopes, one of the inspirations for writing the book was to draw them more clearly into the spotlight. I think there should have been multiple books about Boys and Girls produced before now. They completely deserve it. Their output, their creativity, their politics, their practice, all of it. And they have been overshadowed for a whole kind of variety of reasons. I mean, it was back in 2014 that I wrote an article for the Punk and Post-Punk Journal about Boys and Girls, and that was, I think, one of the first substantial pieces about the history of the band, and I was able to share it with Richard Famous and vice versa, Lance Boyle, and they were kind of quite encouraging about what I'd written. And you can definitely trace the line of that piece to me being asked to kind of write the book. Yeah. As someone who they kind of trusted to sort of tell the story of the band. But yeah, very much so. There are lots of people who will come across this book who know an awful lot about bands like Crass, who just will only have a passing understanding, if that, of the work of Boys and Girls. So one of the hopes is to, bring them more clearly into the light, expose them a bit more, get people to understand it. And of course, we're planning to, in the next couple of weeks, to re-release a 7-CD box set, bringing together all of their studio, all of their live, and lots of unreleased stuff. So again, people can hear the full range, the full sounds of Boys and Girls to go with it. Yeah,
and I think that's the other thing. If they were a band that was willing to kind of experiment, and they had a playfulness with them that maybe kind of got lost with Crass, do you mean? Because they had a very strong public image, but sometimes you didn't feel necessarily that Crass were enjoying it when they were on stage, do you mean? That's a bit harsh, but do you see? Well, I think Boys and Girls were kind of a lot more kind of, would be fun and kind of sometimes take the mickey out of themselves, but just have a kind of humour there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair enough. I mean, I would only say that one of the things that the surviving members of the band kind of cautioned about when kind of coming to write the book was focusing so heavily on their experiences with Crass and making the comparison with Crass. So it's Crass, Boys and Girls, Crass. Whereas, of course, they've got years of work before they join forces with Crass, multiple years of work sort of after they leave. And I was really keen that the book told the full story. Yeah. Because a lot of people will know maybe something about that period when they're close to collaborating, but there's an awful lot more to know about what came before that and then kind of sort of what came after. They're really keen that their story isn't framed through that lens, that it's the Crass and Boys and Girls story. They want they want their independence and their autonomy to be recognised and acknowledged as well.
Yeah, but it did seem that they were willing to kind of, go off in their own direction, do you mean, and kind of try different things. And the track we're going to play now is possibly one of my favourites from Boys and Girls. It's Real Woman, do you mean? And it's very much like a positive kind of upbeat song, do you mean? And it's like, but also very kind of humorous, and And did this come after the period where they had a bit of a flirtation and tried to see if they could get pop success?
Yeah, I mean, they were certainly interested for a period of time in trying to sort of break through get past some of the cultural gatekeepers to get their sort of radical messages in front of an audience that wasn't going to be at DIY punk gigs and wasn't going to kind of traditionally buy their records or kind of hear their songs. And it wasn't a huge success, what they attempted to do, but it is a really brave attempt to do something that radical movements always struggle with, right? Do you stay in a space talking to people who are very sympathetic and who agree with what you say and are very isolated? from others who don't, or do you try and take your message out to people who need to hear it, but they're not convinced and are not part of your culture, your subculture, or your group? And they attempted it, and they deserve credit for that attempt.
Yeah,
but
okay.
The title you're about to play is about the period that comes after that, when the kind of shackles are off and they are kind of re-energized, re-empowered, and enjoying the independence and not feeling the need to hold back in any way.
Yeah, okay, so we'll hear that and then we'll continue. And one of the things I'd like to mention is as well that there's a link with the Nightingales. And I was quite interested of some of the links that you go off to, and Robert Lloyd and the Nightingales, who probably went through something similar, and that's been the subject of a film. But we'll talk about that in a minute. But in the meantime, here is Poison Girls, Real Woman, and you're listening to Under the Pavement on All FM 96.9.
I know it's near the knuckle, but I can tell when I see a real man. When it comes to reality, I've only just begun. You've got a grasp of the real situation. I just blunder about in a close approximation. And you know a lot of people. You're always drinking with your friends, aren't you? You know a lot of people when you've got a lot to spend. I'm not a real woman, I don't nod my head or patiently wait for your favours in bed. I don't wear lace panties at wasted away prices or bondage and scanties at masochist dances. I'm not a real woman, don't waggle my hips or flapple my eyelids or shackle my lips. And I'm not a lemon, so please don't squeeze my bits. I'm not a real woman, I don't aim to please. Twinkle my knickers or go to my knees. The nails on my fingers are tattered and torn. I've had dirty hands from the day I was born. I'm not a real woman, I don't nod my head or patiently wait for your favours in bed. I'm not a lemon, so squeeze your own instead. I'm generous, I'm mean, I'm a law to myself. I just laugh at everything you say. Don't be surprised if I don't look into your eyes. My eyes are on a million miles away. I'm not a real woman, I won't cook your food. I'm not a pastry drinking chin in the nude. I'm bored by your laundry, I'm bored by your jokes. Why do you say them to tell to the blokes? I don't need no favours, I don't need to please. I don't need no boats, don't you tickle my knees. I'm no lamb chop, so please don't fork my beef. I'm generous, I'm mean, I'm a law unto myself. I just laugh at everything you say. Don't be surprised if I don't look into your eyes. My eyes are on a million miles away. I'm not a real woman, I don't look divine. I only like children some of the time. And just like a man must be well hung to be a real woman, well, you gotta be young. Hey, you're not so macho by the look of that bunch. You can save your banana to eat with your lunch. I'm not a real woman, I won't cook your food, and I only want sex when I'm in the mood. I'm generous, I'm mean, I'm a law unto myself. I just laugh at everything you say. Don't be surprised if I don't look into your eyes. My eyes are on a million miles away. I'm generous, I'm mean, I'm a law unto myself. I just laugh at everything you say. Don't be surprised if I don't look into your eyes. My eyes are on a million miles away. I'm not a real woman, I won't cook your food, and I only want sex when I'm in the mood.
And that was the unmistakable sounds of Poison Girls with Real Woman. And we're talking to Rich Cross, and Rich, you've written a book and called This is a Message to Persons Unknown. I've got it right in front of me. I was looking for it then. Sorry, the story of Poison Girls. We should mention that it's been published by PM Press in the UK and over in the US as well. And we were just chatting that today is quite an important day as well in terms of, by coincidence,
Yeah, so it's 10 years to the day since we very, very sadly lost vice versa. So entirely coincidentally, we've chosen this date, but it's definitely a moment to, just to kind of pause and reflect. Obviously, she was losing her was a big wrench for an awful lot of people, but she lived a remarkable life, and it's so important to stress how different the world was when she took to the stage in 1977 to front Poison Girls. I mean, today, it's nothing special if somebody in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s gets on a stage and picks up a guitar and grabs a microphone. But back in 1977, although punk had loads of rebellious spirits about it, it hadn't emerged without picking up some of the terrible things in society, like the sexism and the racism and the ageism. And Vi was there on stage in her 40s with a mum, strapping on a guitar and singing songs that she'd written, and absolutely demanding to be acknowledged and respected and accepted in a punk movement that was sometimes suspicious of older people, certainly suspicious of women on a lot of occasions. And she absolutely made no accommodation to that. And that was one of the constants throughout her career with Poison Girls, just an absolute refusal to take shit from anybody and a determination to assert her right to be on the stage, singing her songs, describing her politics, making her art. And she's influenced a huge number of people in the years since Poison Girls were active. But a redoubtable woman, a huge inspiration and a big icon. So if you have a glass of water or a glass of something stronger, definitely raise a glass this evening. Have a toast in memory of Vi.
Yeah, and it's just to go back to the book as well. I think it's a great book because it is one of these books that's got an awful lot of information in about the band, but it's also like a coffee table book seems to be like a really negative, awful way of saying it. But if I put it's got pictures in as well. Put it that way, do you see what I mean? It has got kind of, gig flyers and quite a few kind of bits from the Impossible Dream magazine, which ran alongside the band as well. And it was not just music, it was words and images as well, which kind of was the whole kind of package in many ways, wasn't it?
It was, and we were very clear from the early stage of discussing the book that we wanted it to be a large format book and we wanted it to be in full colour. Because Poison Girls are not a monochrome band. It's not all, A4 photo stat flyers.
Yeah.
And we really wanted to represent the breadth of their sort of art and their design, and definitely the Impossible Dream. That the inclusion of Impossible Dream was one of the ways that we kind of extended from this original idea, and we wanted to include as much of that as possible. But a lot of their sleeve designs, single designs, posters, all that iconography is really, really powerful, really imaginative and really colourful.
Yeah. And I would like to kind of jump ahead to kind of the last couple of releases, and one is the album Songs of Praise, and just as I don't think it's a record. I don't know why you miss out on some records, but it was a record that I missed out on, do you mean? But the artwork on there is unmistakable. That if people know the kind of woodcut artwork of Clifford Harper, who's done stuff like, it's done some various different magazines, but it's also done, anarchist posters and posters for the Anarchist Book Fair. And it's a very distinctive kind of style, do you see what I mean? Yeah. And it seemed like they were kind of reclaiming, not reclaiming anarchism, but kind of going, yeah, this is what we are, do you see what I mean? We are, and we are part of the anarchist scene, for want of a better word, yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely, 100%. It's part of a reorientation back to their roots. In terms of design and presentation. And they approached Clifford Harper to provide amazing artwork. He did it for that. And he did it for the Price of Grain single that came off as well. Brilliant, brilliant artwork. But yeah, it's definitely a testament to their desire to strengthen that visual side, that anarchist aesthetic and visual format.
Yeah. Yeah, and I should just say, kind of, we do. We're hoping to have an interview. I know he's not been well, but with Clifford Harper on the radio show. We've tried to organise it for a long time, and again, we're not sure how practically we're going to do it. It might be someone sending the questions and recording it, but that's definitely something that we've got coming up. In the future, do you see what I mean? And just talking about his artwork and the influence of his artwork. But just then to say, kind of, I don't know, it wasn't from the book that I got this impression, but I'm sure from reading things online, do you mean? It did feel that after Poison Girls had finished and then I think Vice Versa went to live in Spain a little while, and then I think she came back to Brighton, a few years later. But was the feeling that no, I'm not saying disconnect, do you mean, but did it feel like they didn't get the credit that they should have done? Was there a slight sadness there? Is that reading too much into it?
Well, they did a lot of creativity after the band finished. They were involved in this they called it AIDS the Musical. And they did some sort of theatrical work. And even in Spain, Lance was also living in Spain, as was Vi. They did some musical projects together. So it's definitely not a sense of kind of, I think, sadness sort of at the end. But Poison Girls kind of recognised by the end of the 1980s, the world in which they were working had changed. It was a pretty terrible time politically. So it was a terrible time if you were fighting against the bomb and the proliferation of nuclear weapons and the impending World War. It was a terrible time after the miners' strike. The miners fought valiantly for over a year, but then were forced back, and the pit closure program went ahead. And there was a lot of contraction in the kind of radical and alternative scenes. Kind of rave culture kind of popped up. And it wasn't really until kind of the poll tax campaign in the early 90s that you got a sense of a kind of generalised sort of rebellious spirit that was built on grassroots stuff. So I think by the time they made a decision to stop, it was just a feeling that the world had kind of changed around them a bit. They were certainly doing well, playing venues in Europe, going across to continental Europe, playing some of the major spots, and had a really good reception then. But, they acknowledged they could go down to Barnstable and play 60 people. That was just the reality of how far things had kind of moved on. But I wouldn't say they ended with a sense of defeat. It was a sense of recognition, really. They had a really long career, if you want to call it that, from 1977 to the end of the 80s. That's far longer than most bands of any kind, political or otherwise, manage. And I think they can be really proud of that achievement, but they recognised, time had come to move on.
Yeah.
Of course, they did the revival, the shows in London and go back to Berlin as a kind of one-off, and bringing lots of the old lineup back to share the stage with them as a kind of really joyous way to sign the process off. So they do have a really nice way to bring things to an end. And then, of course, I was lucky enough to see Vi's last stage performance back in Brighton, playing a gig to celebrate the re-release of the Persons Unknown single by All the Madmen. And it was absolutely wonderful to see her, just on the cusp of 80, do a version of Persons Unknown live on stage in front of a hugely appreciative audience in Brighton. I'm so pleased I was able to get to that show.
Yeah, and then the other thing, I guess, if we round up by talking about the impact, then one of the things that you've got in the book as well is that there's a punk festival which isn't just older punk bands; it's kind of new bands as well, called Another Winter of Discontent. And back in 2017, they did a charity event celebrating the life of Vice Versa called Vi Day, and just some of the names there were like established bands like Dirt and Amiga Tribe, who were contemporaries of Poison Girls, but also you had like bands like Lab Rats, which are again a North Manchester based band, Yasmin, who were, definitely made up of younger people who, possibly wouldn't have been at those gigs, Yasmin, early on, but just obviously aware of the influence. Yeah,
no, absolutely. That was a great day. Did you manage to go there?
I didn't manage to go. No. Yeah.
No, it was a really fantastic day, and every band that played had agreed to do one Poison Girls cover. Yes. Just to kind of really bring home the point of Vi's Day. And it was great. And every cover song was unexpected and done really innovatively and strangely. It was a really, really lovely day. Yeah. Oh no! Well, it sounds like it is a great book, and I have read it, and it's there, and it is quite a weighty tome. Do you see what I mean? But just to say, if people want to get hold of a copy, then I know you can get it from PM Press, their website, which is I'll start this one again, pmpress.org.uk, and it's also available in the United States as well from just pmpress.org. I'm guessing it's a book that you can order from a local bookshop, and they'll get it in for you as well. Yeah. Go into your local bookstore and ask for a copy, they'll get one in. For sure. Yeah, and well, probably, I'm sure you agree with me, I don't go to that big kind of Amazon type company to buy it. Try and keep it kind of grassroots if you can. Yeah, the money that PM Press, it doesn't go off to shareholders or multimillionaires. It goes back into producing more radical, anarchist, subversive material. So you know where you want to put your money.
Yeah, yeah. And we should be just doing that. I don't know if I should be saying this, but all being well, there is the Anarchist Book Fair happening in Manchester. Manchester's Open Anarchist Book Fair on Halloween, and all being well, we'll be able to get you up for that to kind of talk about the book, and obviously PM Press will be there and they'll have copies of the book available.
Yeah, it'd be lovely. Really would like to do that. That'd be great if we can work that out.
Yeah. Okay then. All right. Well, it's been great to speak to you, despite the kind of technical issues.
Great.
And and thanks again for that. And we're going to close. Do you want to? Now, I had to just for radio reasons. Basically, I would have had to leave you hanging on the line for a long time. Do you want to let people know what track you've decided to close with and why?
Yeah. So we're just going to listen next to "Fear of Freedom," which is a song off the Where's the Pleasure album, which is the album that Poison Girls release after they separate from Crass and kind of go their own way. And I've chosen it, because it's an amazing song, but I've chosen it because it shows how different a band Poison Girls are. So it's a song about the oppressive power of the state, of societies and systems that crush people. But it's also about the way that you can resign in the face of that pressure, that you can capitulate, and indeed you can be fearful of asserting yourself and taking freedom and liberating yourself and pushing back against those systems of oppression. But they do it in such a remarkable and unexpected and haunting and seductive way. And they were so capable of that. It's such an illuminating example of Poison Girls' practice. A really powerful, really political, persuasive song, but there isn't a three-chord punk thrash.
No. Okay. Well, thank you very much for that. And this is Poison Girls' Fear of Freedom.
Falling back headlong to the start of it all. You fell back screaming the original fall. You fall to earth between your mother's knees, bayoneted by the need to please. Children, listen, shiver, listen. Your story, my story, your story. Old familiar carrion crow, junk impresario roadshow. Watch out for the spiders of compulsion. Watch out for the spinners of submission. Trussed up and paralyzed, they've got you where they want you. They leave you there to die. They've got you where they want you. You fight for your life, held back by fear of falling. You fight for your life, held back by fear of feeling. You fight for your life, held back by fear of freedom. Your only fear, the fear of freedom.